Can I have your attention? Thank you all. My name is Dan Glickman, and as Ivo mentioned, I am pleased to co-chair with my friend and colleague Doug Bereiter the Chicago Council on Global Affairs Initiative on Global Agriculture Development, and also with Catherine Bertini, who was former co-chair, former head of the World Food Program for many years, great humanitarian in herself. We're glad to lead the effort, and we have many members of the advisory committee who are here, who, under the leadership of Ivo Dalder and the Chicago Council, are really making a mark in the whole issue of feeding the world, doing it sustainably, and trying to find a way in the process to bring the world together. So we're delighted to be here, and I'm delighted as a former Secretary of Agriculture with my colleague Ann Veneman, another former Secretary of Agriculture. I think this is a Guinness Book of Records. There's never been 3 Secretaries of Agriculture in one room. And, but we're delighted to introduce our friend Tom Vilsack, former governor of Iowa, current Secretary of Agriculture. In about 15 days, he will beat my record because I was in office about 5 years and 11 months, and he's doing this to spite me. He's staying in this job just so he can beat my record. But we were talking that there was a Secretary of Agriculture, James Wilson, who had the job for 16 years, the longest-serving cabinet secretary in history. And I have a feeling that Tom Vilsack is not going to try to beat that record because the guy is dead, so he can deal with me. But anyway, but beyond everything else, he's one of the 2 remaining cabinet members under President Obama who has been there the entire period of time. He's an extremely talented public servant, and recently announced initiatives in smart agriculture, but heavily involved in research, biotechnology, and has presided over the strongest period of agriculture in this country's history, in terms of trade, in terms of net income, in terms of land values. I mean, I just regret that I didn't have the talent that he did or the circumstances that can do that. But he's been a very, very successful Secretary of Agriculture. So without further ado, I introduce to you Tom Vilsack.
Well, Mr. Secretary, thank you. You're absolutely right. I am sticking around long enough to surpass you. And Dan Glickman was the 4th longest serving secretary in our history. So there were 2 other fellows that served for 8 years, and then there's Big Jim Tama Wilson, who served for 16 years. I have no idea how he lasted 16 years in this job. Look, there are a lot of really important people in this room today, and I could go down the list of all of them, but I actually think the most important people may be in the back of the room. We have young people from an FFA chapter in Illinois, and I think, honestly, from my perspective, despite the fact that we have former ambassadors here, we've got former secretaries of agriculture, both at the national level and the state level. We have World Food Prize laureates here. We have CEOs of major agricultural business companies. And that's just at this table right here. This is an amazing place. But these young people who are here, I think the message that I'm about to deliver is as much, if not more, about them and the world in which they're going to live than it is about all of the rest of us here. So I really appreciate the FFA kids being here today. So I thought about these remarks this afternoon, and it occurred to me that there's an intersection of 4 books that I have recently read. Les Gelb's Power Rules, Richard Haass's Foreign Policy Begins at Home, Secretary Clinton's Hard Choices, and President Jimmy Carter's Call to Action. And what struck me about those 4 books, even though they were in a sense much different in terms of where they start, they had a number of constant themes. And one of the constant themes is that there are significant global problems that must be addressed. We all know of the terrorism challenge. We are now acutely aware of the pandemic challenge. Those in this council have been talking about the global food security challenge, and we have recently begun an earnest discussion in this country and around the world about climate change. These are extraordinarily difficult and challenging issues that will impact and affect the lives of these young people in very significant ways. And what struck me about the books that I read is a recognition that the world has changed, that it is no longer simply about military might, that if we're going to address these global challenges, it will require resolute leadership, and there's frankly only one country that has the capacity, the credentials, and the capability of addressing and leading this effort globally, whether it's global food security, whether it's climate change, whether it's pandemic response or the response to terrorism. And that's the United States of America. And within these books, it suggested that there are a number of strategies that need to be focused on and advanced. We obviously and clearly need to strengthen the world economy, and we need to spend a good deal of time and effort trying to eliminate and certainly reduce the amount of world poverty. And that obviously will have an impact as well on global food security. We have to do this in the context of a changing climate that will challenge economies to adapt and mitigate. And I think we have to also understand and appreciate that to do so, it's going to be necessary for us to recognize the central role that women will play throughout the globe in trying to resolve these issues. And as I thought about what part of the economy, what part of the world, what industry, what calling could essentially speak to the central role of women to allow the world to adapt and mitigate the climate change that can improve the economic outlook and that can result in less food insecurity, it occurred to me that agriculture is at the center of all of that. And often it's not fully appreciated and recognized as the capacity that it has to essentially address all of these global challenges. So today, I thought I'd talk a little bit about how the United States is positioned to use agriculture, how the United States Department of Agriculture is helping this country address globally these challenges and issues, and the role that innovation, both in terms of products and in terms of approaches, plays in trying to create a more secure world from food insecurity, from pandemics, from terror and poverty. It's an exciting opportunity and it's an exciting time to be the Secretary of Agriculture and to be engaged in this effort. Let me start with climate change. I think it's important and necessary for us to have a better analysis here in the United States of what the impact of climate is on agricultural production. Secretary Glickman mentioned the fact that we've had a very strong agricultural economy, and we have indeed have had record levels of income and trade. But that's going to be challenged over time unless we're able to adapt and mitigate to a changing climate. We're beginning already to see the impacts of climate on agriculture. That's why we established, at the President's direction, climate hubs. There are 7 of them located across the United States and 3 sub-hubs located in various areas. And they are designed to essentially begin the very detailed analysis of exactly how climate is impacting and affecting agriculture, what are the vulnerabilities and risks in every region of the country, and what are the technologies and strategies to try to address those impacts. I was in Iowa recently at one of the hubs. I was in a corn and soybean field. I was looking at a very interesting piece of equipment that had been stationed in that field for 15 years. And over time, the innovation in technology and computing science has allowed them to put a number of sensors on this tower that I was looking at that record 20 observations per second of water vapor, of CO2 emissions, wind velocity. And the idea being that this information would provide us some better information as to how climate was impacting over a long period of time this particular field. These sensors were so specific, so acute, so accurate, that if I walked downfield of that sensor it would literally pick up and monitor my own breathing in addition to the crops that we're breathing. It's that sensitive. By virtue of that information, the scientists have learned that the impact of warmer weather on that field has greater impact during the evening hours than during the daytime, which is of interest, and has allowed them to in turn advise the farmer on how he might be able to increase productivity in certain parts of his farm field. These hubs are going to give us information that will factor into a series of tools that we're developing at USDA to give our farmers, and therefore ultimately over time the world's farmers, better information. We have a program called GraceNet, which is now designed to take a look at the carbon sequestration capacity of American agriculture to be able to determine precisely how we might be able to increase carbon sequestration using agriculture, how we might be able to improve soil health through cover crops, through double cropping, through better nutrient management, better irrigation systems, agroforestry, and be able to accumulate enough data to be able to factor that into an approach to adapt and mitigate to climate. We also have a Common Farm program, which is going to do the same thing for conservation programs. We'll be able to monitor the exact impact and effect of a conservation program on greenhouse gas emissions, on carbon sequestration, and then be able to potentially market that result to increase income opportunities and to collect data. We'll have a nutrient management tool to do the same for livestock production. All of this is going to be fed in part into a new alliance that we established several years ago with the rest of the world called the Global Research Alliance. The United States led this effort along with New Zealand. It's now 40 countries and growing. And we have focused our attention on ensuring that we don't duplicate or replicate important, necessary research on the issues of climate and agriculture's ability to adapt and mitigate. We've broken our responsibilities into rice production and crop production and livestock production, and we are beginning to share information and data. We're beginning to better integrate and coordinate research so that we as a world community can do a better job of understanding and appreciate the responses to climate. And all of this led to the announcement 2 weeks ago at the United Nations, where the United States, again, in a leadership position along with South Africa and the Netherlands, Vietnam, and the World Bank, established the Climate Smart Agricultural Alliance. It now has over 100 members and growing, many countries, NGOs, others who are interested in encouraging increased agricultural productivity around the world, ensuring that agriculture around the world will be more resilient, and figuring out ways in which we can reduce the greenhouse gas emissions of global agriculture, which is roughly 14%. In the United States, it's 7% of emissions, how we might be able to do a better job of reducing greenhouse gases. So this effort in climate is coordinated, focused, and global. And the United States is leading, and USDA is an integral part of that leadership opportunity. Critically to the success of all of those initiatives is the role of research. And I'm proud to say, as I know Secretary Veneman and Secretary Glickman understand and appreciate, we are extraordinarily proud of the internal research capacity that we have at USDA. Nearly 100 agricultural research service locations around the country, developing new ideas and innovation in agriculture. Since I've been Secretary, over 600 patent applications have been filed. They've entered into several hundred cooperative agreements to take that internal research, which is focused on better crop production, better protection, mapping the genome of certain crops and livestock, figuring out how to test and protect against certain diseases that are significant. We've done that, combining it with our external research effort under the newly established National Institute of Food and Agriculture, to really focus on some of the key challenges the world faces in terms of agricultural production. We've made advancements in drought-resistant maize, in combating wheat stem rust, in looking at ways in which we might be able to address some of the livestock challenges that are faced particularly in sub-Saharan Africa with East Coast fever, improvements in terms of aflatoxin. All of this has helped to encourage more innovation, more investment in research, and a better collaboration between the United States and the rest of the world. We take this research and we ensure that it gets spread around the world through a variety of ways, not the least of which is the Borlaug and Cochrane Fellowships, 390 fellowships named after Norman Borlaug. 2,631 Cochrane Fellows have been working to create a relationship, a one-to-one relationship between our scientists and our farmers and the world's scientists and farmers to ensure that the information that we get, the knowledge that we obtain, can be shared in a very innovative, creative, and very personal way. But we went one step further this year. Earlier this year, we established an open data initiative in which we've unlocked the vault, so to speak, of all the research that the United States Department of Agriculture has been engaged in, which it has kept to itself for far too long. We now have an open data policy where that information is now being put online, now being made available to scientists all over the world in the hopes that they'll be able to use this more effectively and more efficiently. We've also led the effort along with the United Kingdom in establishing the Global Open Data Agriculture and Nutrition Initiative, which is really designed to encourage collaboration on this open data, not just the US's data, but the world data. And we're excited about the possibilities of that sharing, that innovative approach to data sharing. We recognize that we have to work with the private sector. When I came into office, there were 22 petitions for deregulation of biotechnology crops. We have reduced that down to 4. We have reduced the amount of time it takes for regulatory approvals on deregulation petitions from over 900 days to a little over 360 days. We've worked with the industry to create a generic seed opportunity after patents expire so that we can open up this new opportunity that's been created by the private sector to encourage more innovation and entrepreneurship. We've also worked very hard in trade discussions and negotiations to ensure that biotechnology and the advancements of biotechnology can be appropriately viewed, appropriately respected in trade discussions. We believe very strongly in a science-based and rules-based system in order to spur innovation. I can't tell you that those discussions are always particularly easy to have. There are a lot of folks who continue to look at our biotechnology industry with a bit of concern. Not so much, I think, because of the science, but because of the impact it could potentially have on producers in other countries. There is still a desire, I think, and an effort on the part of some to do as much as they can to protect their own agricultural interests. What we have to continue to say is that it's in our long-term best interest as a global community that we encourage appropriate science, that we encourage biotechnology, we encourage ways in which we can grow crops, more crops with less water, more crops with less pesticides, more crops with less chemicals. And in order to do that, we have to embrace science. We cannot be afraid of it. We also have to work with our friends in other countries that see the importance of biotechnology, but have yet to synchronize their regulatory processes with ours. We have an interesting discussion, an ongoing discussion, and a very long discussion with the Chinese in this particular area. We have attempted to try to encourage them to work with us to better synchronize their regulatory process so we can get innovation moving forward. It's difficult. They only start their process after we have finished ours, which lengthens the amount of time before these new technologies can actually become commercially viable by a number of years. We continue to work with the Chinese. We've established a Chinese-American business relationship in China with the hopes of Chinese business leaders making the case to their own government that it's in their long-term best interest to synchronize regulatory processes. I've traveled to other countries, including Brazil, to make the case that we, the Brazilians and the United States, need to send a consistent message about biotechnology to the Chinese and to all countries about the need for a better synchronized system. And so there is ongoing efforts and continued efforts in those spheres to ensure that our private sector research is allowed to advance in a timely and appropriate way after appropriate review. Research has been critically important, and candidly, with budget difficulties and cuts, it's been tough to convince Congress to continue to invest in agricultural research in the same way and to the same extent that they've invested in health research. Frankly, there's not much difference. If you think about it, if you really want to deal with better health, you're going to have to deal with better nutrition. You're going to have to deal with access to higher quality foods, more nutritious foods. All of that requires research. That's why in the Farm Bill, the recently passed Farm Bill, which I like to refer to as a Food, Farm, and Jobs Bill, we made the case to Congress to extend our tools in terms of innovation and research by establishing a new way of funding agricultural research to complement our ARS facilities and complement our National Institute of Food and Agriculture. It's a private foundation, 15-member board, and Dan Glickman has agreed to chair that board in an effort to try to encourage more investment in agricultural research. The United States government has funded the initial effort with a $200 million contribution. The Farm Bill requires that that be matched by the private sector, dollar for dollar, at least dollar for dollar. So over time, what we hope to see is at least $400 million, if not more, invested in cutting-edge research to complement the work that's being done at the private sector and within USDA. And all of this effort requires us to also make sure that we connect to other countries in a way that is relevant to them. That's why I worked with Secretary Clinton and Administrator Raj Shah of USAID to establish the Feed the Future initiative. This was started a number of years ago when Secretary Clinton was Secretary of State, and it really is designed to have a country-led effort focused on global food security, focused on the sub-Saharan African countries, some Asian countries and Central American countries that are challenged in terms of food security. And it is country-led. It is not something where the U.S. comes in and dictates what is to happen. It's where we listen and we try to respond and react. So USDA is currently working with producers in a number of countries to increase their training and their knowledge about modern agricultural activities. We've encouraged modern poultry production systems in sub-Saharan Africa. We've looked at ways in which we can improve animal husbandry to increase yields and increase meat production. Horticulture, dairy, crop production all have been part of this training effort. Now 7.4 million farmers have been impacted and affected by the Feed the Future initiative, encouraging and improving 3.8 million hectares of land around the world. We've created a credit system so that farmers who need credit to be able to put a crop in the ground will be able to obtain that credit. We've dedicated $156 million to a series of microloans to get small farm holders the opportunity to purchase the inputs necessary to put a crop in the ground. We've encouraged these countries to think not just about their own needs, but also about the trade and export opportunities that exist. That's why we've put millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars in an export assistance program. We worked on policy formulation so it's easier for these countries to, in fact, have the confidence when they trade that they're going to be able to successfully trade. It's important for the regulatory systems, the inspection systems, to be improved, to be modernized, so that countries have confidence when they accept a product from another country that it is safe. They obviously have great confidence in the American products because of our regulatory and food safety systems. We need to encourage other countries to embrace similar systems, and that's why we have worked on 7 major policy initiatives under Feed the Future to make that happen. We have our economists working with economists and statisticians in countries to encourage better data collection, better understanding of what you can get from data, so that there's a stronger and better understood market in each and every state and country that we're dealing with. And we're improving the handling and storage of crops. Tragically, nearly 50% of crops are lost because of post-harvest storage issues. Interestingly enough, in this country, it's not so much post-harvest loss, it's actually what happens on the plates at the end of a meal. 30% of the food that is prepared in this country is wasted. It ends up in a landfill. It's one of the largest producers of methane in landfills. In fact, it's the largest solid waste aspect of landfills across the United States. That's why USDA is working in an innovative way with 200 partners to try to reduce the amount that's put on a plate, to create opportunities to reuse food whose life has not totally expired yet, notwithstanding what it may say on the can or on the box, and why we have encouraged recycling. We're going to continue to see Americans focus on this issue of food waste as part of climate change, as part of making better use and more efficient use of what we grow and raise. So that's part of what Feed the Future does. Feed the Future is also involved in improving nutrition. We've impacted over 12 million children with improved nutrition. One of the great stories of American compassion, I think, is the McGovern-Dole feeding program, which the two secretaries are well aware of. We recently entered into an MOU with USAID to ensure that the schools that we were helping are aligned with the schools that they're helping to improve educational opportunities for youngsters. They have an aggressive goal of helping to 100 million kids in impoverished countries and war-torn countries learn how to read better. It's difficult to learn how to read if you have not been fed. Hardly any of us function particularly well when we're hungry. So combining and coordinating our efforts at McGovern-Dole with the USAID's efforts in their education initiative will result in a more efficient and better use of our resources. We hope that Congress takes action to institutionalize this Feed the Future initiative, institutionalize the training, the credit programs, the data collections, the market access and export assistance, the research in a global food security piece of legislation that Senator Casey and others have been advocating. And our hope is that Congress, this Congress or future Congresses, will be willing to take this and pass it, because it is the right way to approach these issues. It's the right way to, and the most innovative way, to create the relationships that will take advantage of the data that we're collecting, take advantage of the information that we have, take advantage of the science that we've created, take advantage of the ways in which we now understand climate will impact agriculture, and make sure that everyone has access. Because at the end of the day, this is not about worried about the competition, not worried about whether or not American producers are going to be able to compete. The reality that you all know is that we have 9 billion people coming down the pike, and it's going to take everything we can do collectively to be able to adequately feed all of those folks, especially in a world where today 825 million are food insecure. It's going to take substantial increases in innovation. Some have estimated it's going to take as much innovation in agriculture in the next 40 years as in the preceding 10,000 years to be able to meet that demand. So this is not about placing American producers at a competitive disadvantage. It's about American leadership. It's about America's willingness to step up and understand that the world has changed. It's not just simply about military might. It's also about how we can help folks be more economically secure, how we can help them reduce poverty, how we can help them avoid pandemics, how we can help them feed their own people, and create the middle classes who in turn will be interested in purchasing items and products from the United States. It is the classic win-win. Now, in order to do this, we're obviously going to impact women, because 70% of the world's farmers are women. The reality, though, is we have much to learn from the rest of the world here in the United States. I can't tell you how many boards and commissions, how many commodity groups meetings I've been to where I see a whole lot of people who look like me and hardly any that look like Ann Veneman. And that's a problem. The average age of American farmers is 58 and aging rapidly. There are opportunities for us to encourage new people into agriculture. Young women, daughters and granddaughters of farmers, folks going to ag schools in record numbers. There's an opportunity for us to bring women into American agriculture in the same way we're encouraging and enhancing women all over the world. They have an integral role to play. Minority producers, a fast-growing aspect of American agriculture. So commodity groups, livestock groups, agricultural organizations have got to begin to develop strategies for making women in this country feel welcome, not feel as a token, to be candid and honest. So we have started a process in the United States Department of Agriculture where we're looking at boards and commissions and encouraging folks to take a second look at how they might encourage new folks into the system. We need the ideas, the focus, the direction that women in particular can bring to this initiative. So there is a lot going on at USDA. Innovative approaches in terms of diversifying American agriculture, innovative approaches in terms of the products that we're producing, innovative approaches in terms of how we deal with climate change, disease, pests that may occur, innovative approaches in terms of our relationship with the rest of the world. So it is an exciting time. It is absolutely an exciting time. It is the industry to be in. And let me finish before I take questions with this last comment to the young people. You are great ambassadors. The FFA is a wonderful organization. It leads to young people being articulate, being proud of their heritage and culture, proud of where they come from, and capable of educating the rest of us about the important role that agriculture plays. It's going to be important and necessary for you to continue that message. This country has got to understand that agriculture is not what we traditionally see. It's not a backward operation. It's a very forward advanced operation. It's one of the most productive, if not the most productive aspects of our economy over an extended period of time. I mean, think about the fact that in my lifetime, corn production has increased by 300%, bean production by 200%. A dairy cow, when I was born in 1950, produced 5,500 pounds of milk. Today, that same cow produces 22,000 pounds. And there is one poor critter in Wisconsin that produced 72,000 pounds last year. It's all about innovation. It's all about improvements. It's all about an industry that has become so efficient that we don't need as many. And the mistake that we made for far too long was that we didn't overlay that production agricultural economy with a complementary economy that would encourage young people to stay in those communities, stay on the farm, stay on the ranch, regardless of size of operation. That is important because of the value system that's inherent in rural areas, which is why I'm so passionate about this, apart from the challenges we face globally and the tremendous opportunity the United States has. 15% of America's population, nearly 40% of America's military, live in rural America, come from rural America. Why is it that young people from those rural areas disproportionately serve their country? It's because as folks who live, work, and are raised in small towns surrounded by agriculture, they understand a very, very basic principle, which is if there is something valuable giving something to you every single day, then you have a responsibility to give something back to it. Farmers understand that. That's why they replenish and renourish the soil every year. That's why they're involved in soil health campaigns. That's why they're trying to figure out how to do a better job with water and water quality. They understand that if they stop giving to the land's going to stop giving to them and their family. They impart that value to their young people. Those young people understand this country gives them enormous opportunity. The people in this room who are not farmers, we all have the ability to be something other than a farmer because we have farmers in this country capable of producing all that we need. 99.9% of America's population does not farm because we have delegated that responsibility to the 1/10 of 1% that does, which frees us up to do just about anything we want, which has created this enormously wonderful, powerful, innovative, and creative country we live in. So agriculture is a big deal. And as soon as the rest of the country begins to realize it and appreciate it, we're probably going to find it a lot easier to attract bright young people to this industry. It's a happening place, folks, and it has the capacity and the ability to help be at the center of solving all of the major global problems we face. So if that doesn't get you up in the morning, I'm not sure what will. So with that, I appreciate the Chicago Council's willingness to listen to me. Glad to take questions. I'll take your question. If the young people have a question, I'll be glad to take theirs first because I just got finished saying they're like the most important people in the audience. You guys got a question? I'll let you think. Oh, there we go. Brave young soul there.
With the growing population in the United States and how we're losing land, do you have any plans on using hydroponics to grow crops?
Hydroponics and aeroponics are two areas of additional research and additional investment. It's part of our effort to diversify the way in which we produce crops and the people who produce them. It's within the rubric of our Know Your Farmer initiative, where we're really trying to affect and impact local and regional food production systems and linking them up to new markets and farmers markets, food hubs, institutional purchasers like schools. So yes, that we're investing in that. We're encouraging folks to think about it. And it is, again, yet another innovation that's going to expand significantly the supply of food. I've been in several facilities out in the western part of the United States and in the southeastern part of the United States that are growing fruits and vegetables in that space. And it's also something that could be incorporated in an urban setting as well. And many large cities are beginning to look at those opportunities. Detroit, Chicago, two cities in particular that have embraced that notion. Yes, ma'am, you had your...
Yeah. This is a nice segue. You just mentioned the school system, and as I'm sure you know, Chicago Public Schools is the largest school district in the country that has started serving poultry raised without antibiotics twice a month in the school system. And it's been hugely successful and really nice to be progressive in that way. And I'm wondering what the USDA can do to encourage that to happen around the country on a larger scale.
Well, we are in the process of instituting the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act, which is really designed to help improve the health and welfare of America's children. We are faced with a serious issue of obesity and food insecurity among our children. 17 million kids are food insecure. Nearly 30% are obese or at risk of being obese. And that's one of the motivating reasons why we looked at ways in which we can improve the balance of meals at school. More fruits and vegetables, more whole grains, more low-fat dairy, less fat, less sugar, and things of that nature. So it has been an interesting discussion with school districts. Over 90% of the school districts have embraced these changes, but there are a number that have not. And they are pressing Congress to change the rules, which we are resisting. So our first order of business is going to be making sure that we institute and implement that change, because I think it's going to have a profound significance on future generations of youngsters, and I think it's going to lead to a much healthier generation of young people who are willing and physically able to serve their country, because only 20%, 25% of our kids today, 19 to 24 years age, are fit for military service. On the issue of antibiotics, at this point in time, we are working with livestock producers and poultry producers to figure out ways in which we can work with them and encourage them to use antibiotics in a very judicious way. And so that involves additional research in terms of additional methods. It involves working closely with veterinarians as they are now going to be required to essentially work with livestock producers so that the utilization of this is not overused. Obviously, there's deep concern about antimicrobial resistance. And so we are working with the industry. I don't know that we're necessarily at the point where we're going to encourage school districts, because we haven't finished the job of encouraging them with more fruits and vegetables, more whole grains, low-fat dairy, less sugar, less sodium, and fat. And when we get that job done, then we can look at other aspects of it. But right now, we've got our plate pretty full with that. But we are very interested. The President just announced ARM effort, which both is looking at human health and also animal health. And we are engaged in that. We are pursuing that. And it gets back to the research issue. It's one of the reasons why there needs to be continued focus in America, not just on healthcare research, in which there's billions and billions of dollars put into play, but also ag research. Yes.
Thank you. On that ag research question, one of the most promising things coming out of the Ag Research Service in our region, coming out of Iowa, Illinois, and Minnesota, is the Marsden Farm Study, which shows that when you increase diversity in row crop systems, you actually get good yields and cut down on input costs, which is really an agroecological approach. So my question is, when you're thinking about the research agenda going forward, what role do you see for agroecology as well as biotechnology in the research agenda?
Well, I think it fits very nicely into the soil health campaign that we're undergoing right now through NRCS and through generally through USDA. We understand and appreciate we're looking at diversity in all aspects: diversity of crop production, diversity of producers, diversity of crops being produced. So there are several barriers to that approach. For example, one barrier is the way in which we currently provide risk management protection for producers. You know, there are a lot of folks who criticize this risk management aspect of USDA because I don't think they fully appreciate and understand why we have it. We have it not just simply for farmers, but we have it for all of us. Why do I say that? Farming is a risky business. It's an extraordinarily risky business. I mean, you can be the best farmer in the world and do everything right. Mother Nature doesn't cooperate. You got a drought, rains too much, you got a hailstorm, you got a hurricane, your crop's destroyed. And now, today, many of these producers are putting tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, in some cases millions of dollars in the field at risk. So if we don't have some way of making that risk reasonable and not unreasonable, we'll have fewer and fewer people in the business. And eventually what we'll see is some of that production potentially going someplace else outside of the United States, and we won't be as secure. In addition, we won't have the benefit of this extraordinary diversity of what we grow here in the United States, as well as the affordability. So risk management is really for all of us. But right now, risk management has been on a crop-by-crop, commodity-by-commodity basis for all intents and purposes. It doesn't necessarily encourage what you're talking about. So we've devised a whole farm policy, which is really designed to provide insurance protection for farms that have 2, 3, 4, 5 different crops being grown. Now, a lot of that's going to be specialty crops. Great. We want more of that. So I think as we're looking at this, we're incorporating it into our soil health campaign. We're also incorporating it in and asking ourselves, what are the barriers? Some of the barriers are, you know, if you're going to get into a cover crop, you're going to get into a double cropping situation, do you have the market opportunity for that double crop or that other cover crop? Is there a market opportunity? And if not, how can we create it? It's one of the reasons why we put a lot of time and effort and research and money into new biomass opportunities. Tomorrow I'll be in Ohio at the Bioproduct Conference in Ohio that's sponsored by Ohio State. I'm sorry, the Ohio State University. It's tough for an Iowan to say that. And I will tell you that there are 3,100 companies in America today that are converting biomass into chemicals, into plastics, into other materials, into energy and fuel. It's an amazing new opportunity, and we're just at the cusp. We're just at the beginning of this. There are going to be literally thousands, tens of thousands of products that can be made that are bio-based. As we encourage more of that, I think you're going to see more diversity within agriculture. It's also likely going to be a strategy as we deal with changing climates over a period of time. You're not necessarily going to always be able to grow what you're growing or grow it in the same time period. In some cases, those time periods are going to be shorter, which is going to give you opportunities for additional crops. So we are thinking about that and incorporating that in just about everything we do.
Excuse me, sir, try to find some more questions.
Okay? I don't know who he works for. So, you with the Chicago Council? No. USA.
What do you feel is the most pressing and serious concern that is facing the American food in USA today?
You know, that's a question that there's really no right answer to, because I would compartmentalize that question. I think it's a serious issue that we have an aging farming population. I mean, because if you take that to its logical extension over time, you know, right now there are 3 times the number of farmers over the age of 65 as there are under the age of 35. What's the consequence of that? That's an issue. Climate, obviously, a serious issue. We surveyed 18,000 Midwestern producers as part of the Climate Hub effort. About 4,600 producers responded, so really good, pretty good response rate to a survey. We asked producers in the Midwest, would you like help with dealing with climate change? Would you like to understand it? Would you like help to create technologies and techniques that would address climate change? I may get these numbers a little bit wrong, but the gist of it is correct. 60% of the people responding said, you know, I'm not sure, I don't even believe in that climate change stuff. Of the 40% that did, 20%, half of them felt people don't really have any impact on that. So that's a really small percentage of the people that you'd be dealing with if you're talking to them about climate change. Then we asked a companion set of questions. We said, would you be interested in help with weather variability? Absolutely. We'd love to have information about that. You know what? I don't care what we call it. It's an issue we have to address. In some circles, you're going to call it climate change. In other circles, you're going to call it weather variability. But the bottom line is we've got to get serious about it. So that's an issue. Another issue is the attitude that folks have about science and the division that exists within agriculture. Different production methods. Some people really, really genuinely feel that one production method is better than another production method. One production method is more sustainable. One production method is more efficient. One production method is better. I don't see it that way. Back to the diversity issue, I honestly think what we ought to be about is, in this country, is embracing diversity and encouraging all kinds of production methods and trying to figure out how they can work together, how they can coexist in the same neighborhood, because there's just, I think, extraordinary strength in diversity, especially in all things natural. There are issues of funding, and to do all of this, any of it, you're going to have to continue to be innovative, and that's tough to do when you're scraping for, research money, and foundations and other organizations are putting a tremendous amount of money into healthcare research, and I don't begrudge that, but it came into stark contrast for me when I was visiting with one of our ARS operators, and I said, the reason why the health folks have this advantage is that they keep talking about curing cancer, curing other diseases. Well, that's a pretty powerful argument. She looked at me and she said, Secretary, we can prevent cancer. Well, there's a thought. That's a powerful thought. Well, that's not necessarily in the psyche of policymakers and foundations and folks with lots and lots of money. It's not filtered down yet to the point where we can be competitive, because this is going to be very, very important to be able to fund those kinds of activities. So I'm not sure that you can really focus on one issue, and I think, frankly, and I'll close with this. I think it's the image. I talk to farmers. God, I love them. I really do. I love them. But here's how they have been marketing the opportunity. I listen to them. And I go, and here's what they say. They say, Mr. Secretary, we're overregulated. Golly, we got so many regulations. Mr. Secretary, we're overtaxed. Mr. Secretary, we work really hard. And, some of us are making pretty decent money, but others are struggling. That's the marketing strategy to young people. Come into an industry that's overregulated, overtaxed, you'll work 2 jobs, and you won't make much money. That table back there, how many of you are convinced to do it based on that message? Instead of, you are the generation that literally will have the capacity and the power to respond to changing climates, to continue increasing productivity, to meet the world's greatest need, which is to ensure that everyone has a decent meal, to create stronger economies worldwide, reduce poverty, eliminate the principal reason why people look to terror and look to tear things down, provide for a healthier climate and a healthier generation, and create a new American economy that's bio-based, less petroleum-based, less reliant on foreign oil, and create strong middle classes. And you can do all of that in a rural place, which is more persuasive over there. That message or the other message. We have got to market agriculture differently. We have to put some pizzazz into agriculture, because it's there. It's an amazing thing, and I will never forget being at Penn State and looking at all this whiz-bang research these people are doing on these university campuses. Doctor, you do great research, and you tell a few people about it, but the world doesn't know about this research. It's fabulous. You guys are detectives. I mean, it's amazing stuff. So I said, you're kind of like CSI for agriculture. And the guy laughed. He said, well, it's funny. He said, that CSI program, he said, it's so popular that we had to create a school of criminal science, whatever CSI stands for, because we had all these kids wanting to be the next guy who solves crimes. And they literally created a new school at Penn State for that purpose. Why? Because there was a television show that kind of made it look kind of cool. What are we doing? What are we doing at DuPont Pioneer? What are we doing at USDA? What are we doing at Purdue? What are we doing at all the organizations that are represented around here to say to these young people, there is only one place you should be thinking about, and that's agriculture. There's only one calling that could change the world in fundamental ways. We need to do that. Otherwise, we're going to lose a lot of these young people. And we'll use them to some other great endeavor. But they have an extraordinary future. I'm just convinced of it. So, appreciate you being with me today.